What is up, everybody? How are all my high-performing peeps doing out there today? Welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am Jason Sutton, your host, and I am the Guru. On this episode, I go away from my normal long interview style with all of my outstanding guests, and I try to connect with you, the listener, as I bring my weekly training session with my staff, my CGA staff, to you, and also Facebook Live and Instagram Live, where me and the staff fielded some great teaching questions from the viewers. So thanks for everybody that tuned in to the Facebook Live, Instagram Live feed. I got some really good feedback from several of you saying that they thought this was beneficial. So we're going to start doing this more often. If you, the listeners, feel like this was a worthwhile format and it helped you with your teaching, we want to get some dialogue going. I want to hear from you. As it's all about you, the listener, I want to put out the content that's going to help you with your teaching and with your life, and anything I can help you with, you know I'm here for you. So let's introduce my staff before we get going, because I'm so proud of these guys. Just the growth that they've shown in the couple of years that they've been teaching has been phenomenal. I've got Seth Merz and Robbie Fales with me. Seth Merz is my director of junior golf and really does everything junior golf at the club. Makes me look really, really good because he does such a fantastic job with one of the best junior golf programs in the country. And then I've got Robbie Fales, newly staff instructor, which is another superstar that's just really coming on strong. And you guys can follow these guys on the Twitter and Instagram at Seth Merz Golf for Seth, and then Rob Fales Golf on Instagram for Robbie, and Twitter as well. So they're both very active on social media. So reach out to these guys and tell them how much you appreciate them sharing this information, as I'm trying to get their names out there as well, because these are the young superstars of our teaching game going forward. So can't tell you how much I appreciate their information and their learning and their personal growth that I get to see every day. So I'm glad to share these guys with you. And once again, give me some feedback on this episode. You can also go to my Facebook page or the Golf Teaching Professional page, where the video portion of this is posted. As again, we're going to try to start doing some of these to sort of combine the audio with some visuals, which I think can be really, really cool. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get to our CGA Staff Training Day, Ask the Guru, Facebook and Instagram Live. I hope you enjoy it. All right. So welcome to a special edition of the Golf Guru Show. We've got Staff Training Day here at Carmel, and happy to be joined by my staff, Seth Merz, Secret Agent Seth Merz, Junior Golf Director / Jack of all trades, and Robbie Fales, hashtag legend, hashtag SpongeRob, hashtag Curious George. Any other ones? We still haven't got one to stick yet. No. I'm not sure that those are going to work, but
like Joe King and the Rising.
But anyway, thanks for joining us, guys, and
thanks for having us.
We're going to just do an impromptu sort of training session. We've fielded some questions. We're also going live, which is a new thing. I just thought I'd shake it up. You know why? Because it's my show.
You can do whatever you want.
I can do whatever I want with the show.
You do you, boo-boo.
And I'm going to do it. And so hopefully we got some people joining. It's tough to see the screens there, but I know some people are commenting on, and you're probably going to have to pull double duty there.
Yeah, no, I'll go.
SpongeRob and get flexible. But, yeah, that's awesome. So I've got some news, some good news on my front that you guys already know that will be coming out this week. I have partnered and aligned myself as a master faculty member for Swing U, which is pretty exciting. We've been shooting some videos for them. For those of you who don't know what Swing U is, it's a digital marketing company that basically very similar to like a Revolution Golf type of deal where we're putting out content for average golfers, not so much for teachers. So a little different deal, and could turn into something bigger than that. But pretty excited, and the press release will come out this week, which will be exciting for me. And thanks for Robbie and Seth for helping me with the videos. We've already shot about 50 videos and got a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe. But just wanted to throw that out there. Still no advertising for the podcast, so I can do whatever the heck I want. Right? So we can talk about whatever. So we've got some cool questions. I know typically in these training sessions we will go through different things, whether it's swings that we want to look at with students that we're having trouble with, or just random topics, right? So we've been doing some education lately, haven't we? We had James Ridyard here, and we're all three going to be wedge matrix certified, which is very exciting. We could share a couple of things on that maybe as we go forward. I can't give away all the secrets, but that's cool. And then I actually got Scott Calx coming in to do a certification in another month. So we are getting educated. We're doing, sort of gearing up for some off-season stuff here that's pretty exciting. Also, with Golf Smart Academy, me and Robbie are doing Tyler Farrell's certification. So just trying to get better, man, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's just trying to get the best information. These guys are super smart, and really fortunate to surround myself with great friends like that can help us out and help us become better coaches. So you want to dive into the first question? I think it's a good one to start talking about matchups, but give me that question that you had on our group text the other day.
Absolutely.
How are we doing with viewers there?
I've actually got it pulled up here. We got
3
on Facebook. I can't tell what we got on Instagram there, but
Okay, so do you want me to read the whole
Yeah,
question?
just
Okay.
read the whole thing. I think it's a good segue into a lot of different subjects.
Okay, so this is a hypothetical. So my student books a 2-hour session and shows up complaining about X ball flight issue. Evaluating them, I notice undesirable movements and or desirable movements being made at the wrong times, which I believe are contributing to the problem. On the range, however, the problem isn't happening. There's no functional issue apparent. Before giving them the movement solution without having actually seen the problem, I decide to take them on the course and place them in situations which should bring about the issue. My question is, what situations would you place your student in given certain ball flight issues or movement patterns? For instance, the one that I provided, the golfer is struggling with arc height control, so use a fairway bunker to expose the issue.
What is this a real life or from somebody?
Yeah, I actually had a junior student. This was a little while back, but he was complaining about hitting hooks, and I had him on the lesson.
So you took him on the range and he didn't hit hooks?
No,
is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
And
so that's the thing, is that you don't see that very often to where it's that different as far as,
right.
Well, I guess maybe it was a poor evaluation of himself at
Sure.
the beginning,
Yeah.
right? And maybe just that day he was hitting hooks.
Right. But
how kids are.
But the thing is that I could see things in a swing that down the road I would expect him to hit hooks.
Could create hooks.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you saw him on the range, and how drastic was the difference? I mean, was he just putting a Band-Aid on it, or what do you think?
I asked him, I said, because he played around and he said the ball was I said, do you know what a hook is? And like, yeah, the ball's curving left. And on the range, I asked him, I said, okay, so have you tried to do anything different? Are you trying to solve that problem? And he said, no, I'm just swinging. So
right, well, which is a lot of people, right?
Right. So the question really is, if you want to get a representative sample, obviously you can't recreate tournament pressure perfectly, but in the context of a lesson, if you want to take them on the course and put them in a situation where the odds are that technique is going to break down and show you the issue, what are some examples of ways that you could do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if it's driver, I mean, obviously you can, if he's a hooker, right? I mean, you're going to bring him out to a hole that's going to scare him, right? So maybe a left or right dog leg, I would put him on. The first thing that kind of came to mind for me was like putting him on uneven lies that were going to make him break down.
Yeah.
Right. So if you got a hooker, would you put him on a ball below his feet or above?
If I had a hooker, then I would put it below his feet.
Right. So you're going to create the opposite scenario and see if he can figure out the solution. obviously short game would be, pretty easy if you got somebody that's making poor contact or can't control the arc height, and you're going to put them on dirt, or you're going to put them on a real firm lie. I do like that full swing, putting them in the bunker, I think is very, very, makes it very obvious of, what's going on. Is the arc height too deep?
Or is it entering the wrong place?
Or is it in the wrong place, right? Is it entering in the wrong place, or is it too deep? I think that's really good. But I think, if we're just sticking with hookers, we're sticking with guys that curve the ball too much.
And we don't have to just stick with hooks. And other examples as well.
So I think you just got to think opposite, right? Of what would scare that person the most, right? So if you're a slicer, then you're going to put them on a ball above your feet. I think uneven lies are a great way to expose people. Let's just say, just again brainstorming off the top of my head, let's just say you got somebody that hangs back and doesn't get pressure forward in their full swing enough. I mean, I love putting people on downhill lies. I think downhill lies is a really it's almost a cure-all for a lot of people. Most of the guys we teach or the girls we teach, so that's a really good one.
The other thing for downhill lies that I was thinking about is, we've talked a lot recently about the arc width and making sure that that is lengthening through impact. And so if you have a downhill lie, and like James was referring to with short game, if that radius is shortening, that's going to be a very difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost going to need to learn how to increase that arc width in order to at least achieve a functional ground
Put
contact.
your mic a little closer.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. So say that again. I don't think they could hear you.
Oh, sorry. So I was just saying that, if you had a player who was narrowing the arc width, or the elbows are bending through impact,
right?
Lead wrist is radially deviated.
Radius is getting shorter.
Correct. If that's getting shorter, then putting them on a lie where the left foot is below the right would tend to or could tend to help expose that issue if they're narrowing.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of stuff you can do on the range. Obviously to do the same thing. I mean, if I got somebody that's a hooker, he's way underneath, and then maybe their low point's too far back, I'll have them hit balls off of a tee off their left foot. Just stuff like that, just to really make them. They're going to whiff it if they can't get to the ball and gets their torso open, gets the path moving more left. So I mean, moving that, just creating barriers, and I know you guys like to do that. Anything you come to mind, Seth?
Yeah, I was just even thinking about, a few like external cues to where you almost set them up on the range, because they could be hitting on the range and their mindset could almost be different than it is on the course when they have that problem showing up, but it's not showing up on the driving range just because they're, relaxed or just hitting. It's more of a natural movement. They're not thinking about the actual shot themselves. And you can almost put them in a situation that's almost, as close to real play golf as possible, where you actually give them a target and say, okay, you've got to get this within certain distance, or give them a variance, give them a goal, kind of maybe see if that starts to show up a little bit more, or if the swing changes at all when they start to just change even their focus.
Sure.
Could be something that you could look at.
Constraints, like Sean Kennedy's really good at, if you take half of the fairway out of play and say you can't miss it over there, or something happens.
Yeah, right.
You start losing money, or you start, that's the difficult thing, especially with kids, is like, what are you gonna take away from them? What do you, we're big on making them do push-ups or burpees or something. Yeah, so I mean, just anything that's gonna give them that pressure of going, all right, I got to figure out. I mean, it's real. I mean, that's a big thing. Like, especially when we're talking about sweet spot control, kind of comes to mind when you got kids that are hitting it on the heel, and you've heard me ask the questions like, if I gave you $1 million to hit it on the toe, what would you do, right? I mean, Figure it out, right? Get away from the ball. Do something different. Any other, like scenarios you could think of on the golf course that would, or even just like a situation where we need an answer?
The other one would be like if they have a pelvis sway in the backswing, throwing them on an uphill lie where the left foot's above the right. Because then they're actually having to fight gravity in order to not lose their balance.
It'd be an opposite, sort of reactionary situation. I think especially the guys that hit it thin. I mean, I got one guy that comes to mind. just throw them in an opposite position and just, and that's a thing where it tests your patience, as the coach, because they're going to suck for a minute, right? So they're going to struggle. You got somebody that can't hit the ground and you put them on a downhill lie, they're not going to hit the ground right away.
No.
They're going to have to figure out what that feels like and, and how to change the body positions and what the club's doing and whatnot. So sometimes it depends on the person. It can be dangerous in the fact that they're going to get really frustrated, but you got to gain that trust, obviously, and that's another whole topic. But great question. I think just if you have the opportunity to say, all right, let's jump out on the course and play a couple of holes, which sometimes is difficult here at Carmel, but I've done that plenty of times, especially when I'm working on driver with somebody. It's very different. You can say, hit it between those two flags, but there's nothing like putting them on a hole and telling them they got to hit it in a certain side of the fairway.
Yeah, that's right. Before we just just another random one, like giving them not necessarily a shot on the course, but like tasks, right? So like, what would driver off the deck teach somebody? Like if you had to say, okay, figure that out, what's that gonna do?
Shallow.
Yeah.
Shallow them out, right? Yeah. In order, they got to figure out how to get loft.
Yep.
Deliver the club. It'd be obviously a lower vertical swing plane fix if they can do it. Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, it is. That's pretty brutal if you did that. Like hit this thing off the ground when they can't hit a 7-iron off the ground. That'd be difficult. But yeah, it's that kind of stuff. Old school. You wouldn't believe back in the day before club fitting became as popular as it is now, is you get somebody that's swinging outside in, or they're cutting across it. We'd throw them a 4-degree flat 7-iron and tell them to figure it out, right?
Right.
And so so it's kind of that kind of stuff that I think we're talking about that can be very, very helpful.
Other stuff like, if they're adding a bunch of loft, like throwing them in the trees and saying, hey, you know what, you gotta punch underneath, you gotta get out in the fairway, or again, vice versa. Let's say you got someone who's not launching it high enough, maybe like, put them behind a tree or a bush and
tell me to get over it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. If you can make the golf course your play and practice ground, I'm all for that.
Yep.
For sure. Shout out to Sean Kennedy.
That's right. Learn through play.
That's right. Good stuff. All right. So next question. What do we got?
So I guess the second one we got was from Sasha
Catrone.
Yeah, here, I got it right here.
It's coming down for calcs.
Do you have a standard ball position and setup in the wrist and arms that you teach your students for putting is my question for the day. So putting, setup, wrist positions, ball positions, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say no. I don't have a standard position. It's going to be somewhere forward of center because all we're trying to do is manage, or all I'm trying to do with my students when I'm looking at that is I'm looking at rise over effective loft at impact, right? So if you got somebody that, if they move the ball back, what's that going to do to their rise angle? It's going to make it go down, right? Or they're going to have to back up and do something, or they're going to have to add loft, right? So it's just a matter of I'm trying to get the rise angle to be at least equal to the effective loft of the putter at impact, and preferably a little bit more than the effective loft of the putter at impact. It's gonna change the height of the impact point. So I like to see it more towards the equator, or maybe even slightly above the equator, with a neutral shaft, or if we're looking at, I don't have a putter here, but I always show people that if the shaft's leaning backwards, we're adding loft to the putter. Typically, the impact point's going to be very low on the golf ball, and that's going to tend to make the ball hop. So then, if you've got a rise angle with no rise angle, where the putter's moving downwards as you hit it, now you got a 6-iron.
Yeah.
Right. So we're trying to manage loft, and then we're trying to manage rise. So that'd be very difficult, I would think, if it's not somewhere in the forward half of the stance. Mm-hmm. So finding that is a little bit of trial and error, right? So it's having a measuring tool obviously is if you got Putt Lab or something to measure it, that's awesome. But you can also put a camera on the ground and see what's going on. That's really helpful. to put a slow-mo camera, with your phone or whatever, and see what's happening when the putter hits the ball. What's the ball doing? How long is it in the air?
You put a little line on the...
Yeah, put a line on the ball
Yep.
so you can actually see how quickly is that ball starting to roll. Get something to add there?
No, I was just going to ask, what are you looking for in that? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as possible, right? So, I mean, every ball has some skid. Every ball has, I think, some bit of airborne, which is good. A lot of times, especially if you got longer greens or you got, sometimes that's helpful. But I think, it's just, if you got to manage loft, I mean, I think that's where, if you've got a Scotty Cameron that has 4 degrees of loft, you definitely don't want them delivering more than 4 degrees of loft. I'm not trying to get anybody to hit up 6.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, most people, I think tour average is like 3.2 rise angle or something like that. So I'm trying to get my players to at least have 4 degrees or maybe even 3 or 2.5 degrees of loft at impact. That makes a huge difference. So when you look at it that way, you've got to really figure out where's that ball position need to be. And it's going to be somewhere in between that sort of lead big toe and the middle of your stance, but more towards the foot, I would guess, for most of my players. If you had to say, all right, I'm going to start somebody out, like so as a new player, I would say a putter width inside the left foot is a pretty good place to start, because you got ball positions also going to affect aim sometimes as well, right? Because now you're changing the vision and the perception of the target. So there's a lot of variables there that go into it, but definitely not. There's not really one exact thing that I'm going to teach everybody. It's a lot of times it may come out that way for a majority of my players, but it's still a lot of just matching up different variables. Yeah. Good question, though.
So just talk a little bit about the implications of that role to distance control. And what you see, what's a golfer going to expect if they're maybe getting too much skid or
like it's getting airborne?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I think it can affect the break for one, right? I mean, if the ball's in the air, I've seen golf balls get in the air several inches. I mean, that's going to affect when the ball hits the ground. Then it's got to start to roll and start to turn over. So I mean, that could affect time. It could affect the amount of break they got to play. But yeah, I think it's a huge deal. And that's the only thing with Putt Lab. A lot of times I think I like to put the camera on the ground because I want to know exactly what's happening. I mean, it could be a little bit different on Putt Lab, but yeah, I think then you're looking at the amount of sweet spot control that you have as well. So side to side, up and down is a big deal. So we don't want them hitting it too low on the face. Right, so now the ball speed's lower and you get some different distances. But just I think the loft issue is probably the biggest thing as far as if you can get them to deliver the same amount of loft every time, your distance control is going to be much easier. Good question, Sasha.
Well, so there's a little bit more to that. So we also mentioned wrist positions, and I know this is something that you talk a lot about with your students, and we cover a lot. It's not like we're setting everybody in the same position every time. We're certainly not method teachers by any means. Yeah. But having some sort of variance where we want to get that club remotely close to matching the forearms, grip in a little bit different position. Obviously, not getting it as much in the fingers. We like it a little bit more in the palm.
Less radial, a little more ulnar deviation for sure.
Like that. And how even that can affect sweet spot control and things like that.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, the thing is when, and I think it was John Graham and Eric Barziski did Eric's like genius. That guy did like a trigonometry problem that proved that. Because you'll show up and they're like, well, the heel's off the ground or the toe's off the ground, and it really didn't affect that much, that part of it.
Right. Because it doesn't have any loft.
Right. I mean, obviously, yeah, Steve Stricker does pretty well with a heck of a lot of ulnar deviation in his wrist, right? So, but all we're trying to do really is control the extension flexion piece, right? So, you look at guys like Rory that probably had a little too much flexion going back, which would do a couple things, right? It would shut the face, maybe take loft away too much, and then they'd have to find loft in the downstroke, right? Or he, in his case, he would probably drag it a little too much, and then he would have not enough loft. So there's an opposite part of that. But I would say, I would go away from having the club too much in the fingers and having too much radial, just because most of the time that's going to start to have too much face rotations. You're just managing all these variables, and I think, the hands, wrists, and on the arms and the forearms are often overlooked in putting, I think, because that's really what controls the club. Most people focus on the shoulders and the torso. I think the fine motor skills are the best putters have those fine motor skills. So getting them in a position to where they don't rotate the face too much, they don't add too much or take too much loft away, is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, even extension and flexion of wrist can change radius too. I mean, to an extent to where you can
100%.
You can change the low point of your arc height.
And then you got elbows.
Right. Yeah. And then you've got to make all kinds of other adjustments mid swing to not hit the ground or anything like that. I mean, you see guys, that do have a lot of extension and flexion in the wrist. A lot of times they'll hit the putter beat. They'll hit it fat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that happens
the ground
sometimes, right? Because they'll extend at the wrong time and dig it in the ground. So even just trying to get those wrists into a position where they just don't change as much as possible.
But there's stuff happening. I mean, we've seen the graphs. The guys that have the 3D stuff is posting. There's some extension going on through the ball, and I don't mind that. Again, it's just delivering the loft properly, controlling the face, controlling the sweet spot. I mean, but the guys that are doing it well, they can do it, over and over again. I mean, it's amazing how good the really good putters do that. But we're not saying that they're locked in the whole time. They're not. I know there's some movement. I'm getting ready to talk to Hack Motion. I'm curious to see if, I don't know if any of you guys out there are working with Hack Motion. I've got a call with them next week that I'm curious to see. I would love to get some wrist graphs on putting and dig into that a little bit. Any questions coming across there?
Yeah, we just had one from James Hong, little Honger. Shout out.
Honger.
How different, if any, do you notice students are indoors in a controlled environment and then outdoors on a real green? Do you notice any difference in patterns or effects there?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's probably quite a bit of difference, and I know I measure most of my students inside just because it's just easier, and I'm probably lazy like that sometimes. But I will preface that by
time
saying
constraints, if anything else.
Time constraints.
Having to set up.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say that I will before I measure them, I'm always watching their strokes on the putting green first before I bring them inside. So I'm seeing subtle differences. It just depends on the green speeds, I think, really, because our greens are usually pretty close to the building speed, but not quite as fast. Like our building speed's probably 11 on the stemp. We usually roll around 10 to 11 on the outside. But obviously, I see a lot of difference in. It's not so much more the indoor-outdoor piece. It's just on breaking putts, right? So they're going to change, right to left breaking putts. They're going to tend to aim more right, or they're going to tend to change the club face to get the ball to start, depending on their read. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but I see that more than anything. That's why I always, just to get a baseline of my player, I still like to have them start with a straight putt. And that's when we do it in the building. We'll block the balls. Like everybody's probably seen that, but we don't let them see the result. And I just want to know what they're going to do in a straight putt. And then I might measure them on a left to right and a right to left. And there's definitely change. There's a lot of stuff that changes. Big time. That's why I think it's just important to test your players outside and inside.
Yeah. So that's what James made an extra comment on Sam Putt Lab. So just if you see any numbers change, even just moving from a controlled environment inside to an outdoor.
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, if I got them set up on a straight putt on the outside and inside, it's not going to change much. I haven't seen much change. It's more of just when the aim and the curve changes, I see more differences. But yeah, if you set them up, I mean, again, relatively the same green speeds, because that's the thing. Like I did a clinic with Sean a few weeks ago, and I tested everybody outside, and the greens were very slow. So of course we saw a lot of over acceleration, right? Now I guarantee you, if they hit a bunch of putts on my 11 to 12 stemp on the inside, that would probably smooth out a little bit. So the movement dynamics graph, I think, probably changes a bunch depending on the green speeds. But yeah, I honestly, I don't test them enough outside. I know John Graham's probably rolling over and giving me the finger right now because he does a great job of testing his players on all different types of putts on Sam Putt Lab, which is he'd probably have a better answer. But
one kind of question I had there's if you see a student, do you ever see a student actually change almost their stroke acceleration patterns for different speeds of greens? Like if you've got a slow green, do you see that person move instead of just lengthening stroke to add speed? Do you actually see them go to a shorter, more accelerating stroke?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all the time.
Would you say that would be an incorrect pattern to try and move to, or would you know?
Yes, yeah. I think, and again, it's all about. I hate to use the word consistency, but it's all about repeatability, right? So, I've seen some short to long strokes, over acceleration profiles work okay, but I think in the long term, and I'm more on the game theory scenario, probability long term, it's going to break down.
Sure.
So again, and they're not coming to you typically when they're putting well, so you don't ever get to see that. But yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the environment definitely influences the type of stroke. You're going to see it when you got players that play on long Bermuda greens in Florida, or they're going to have poppier strokes, I would say. And you see the guys from up north that have play on fast bent greens are going to have typically smoother strokes in a general sense. I mean,
sure.
Obviously there's exceptions, but yeah, there's an environment changes everything. I think in all strokes in golf, but putting for sure.
Golf is hard.
Golf is very hard.
I remember John telling me that he'll oftentimes see the kinematic sequence change going from his bay to 3 feet outdoors. Like he'll put a ball 3 feet away, one that's indoors and one that's outdoors, and he'll see that outside the sequence changes.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, that's where, and you'll see me I get caught in the building teaching a lot, but I try to, because on the mat, I guess I don't comprehend a lot of times when I'm teaching on the mat. I know when you hit it fat,
right.
Okay, and I get the ball goes farther when you hit it off mat. I mean, but I'm looking at it like I know it's going to suck on the outside,
yeah.
But sometimes the student can't get over the fact that, oh, well, it's a good shot. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not a good shot. Okay, so I'll take them outside and say, I know you're going to hit it fat. Okay, I get it. So we're working on, so it just, I guess that immediate gratification of actually hitting one and taking a divot is big for the average player. But for me, just logically, I'm like, okay, I know when you can hear the sound,
yep,
sure, and the timing of the sound.
Yeah, we've heard enough shots on the mat. You can tell.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
When it's just a little heavy or a little thin, you can definitely tell.
Yep, and I think sometimes the mat is helpful because it does give them a little bit of confidence, and our mat's soft enough to where I think it's as realistic as it can be. So another topic. I'm just going on a rant.
Oh, Sasha just joined on. Sasha.
Hey, Sasha, we just answered your question, dude.
go Vols. All right, let's take a look and see what else was on here.
I'm going to dive into
you want to go to Alan's
question?
Yeah.
I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, that was really good.
You got it up? You want me to read it? What are some good strategies / best practices when the student has a very restricted upper body rotational mobility and very limited trail arm external rotation for achieving a hand path with enough depth at P4, P5?
Yeah, I think, again, this goes back to, the buzzword of the year is matchups, but we talk about it all the time, right? So it would be awesome if we could get all our players to, shallow the club and then open their torso and then have a bent right arm at impact. But let's face it, some people have trouble moving, right? So if you have I got a perfect example. One of my players that I see regularly, we won't name any names, he's done great, but he had major back trouble. I quit golf for 5 years and now he's back playing. So what are the matchups? Let's just talk about what are the matchups that have to be present for that person to be successful. What about start with the club face? Do you want that club face closed or you want it square to open? This is for you guys.
It's going to depend on where they get to at impact. So,
well, he can't rotate. Let's say he can't rotate going back. He can Okay, let's start from the beginning, right? So
yeah.
Let's say because he's saying he needs depth, right? Yeah. We need depth. How do we get the sweet spot behind the hand path? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yeah.
So number one is we can narrow the stance.
Yep.
Okay, we can add some foot flare,
right.
Yeah,
and we can close the stance, right?
Yeah.
Right. We agreement on that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
See, I've been talking a lot with Sean, and one thing that
he wants them this way, but how are you going to get him any depth in the backstroke?
You would pronate the forearm and get the center mass more behind.
Yeah, but his arms out here in front of him, there's no chance. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I get that on the front side, but I would rather have. Let's break it down into two pieces, all right? So would you rather have somebody that can rotate more forward but swings across the ball, or would you rather have somebody to hit or swing the club from inside out but can't rotate to the left?
Long term, probably the second one.
Yeah, 100%, right? So because now he's got a chance to hit a draw, or he's got a chance to control the sweet spot somewhat. Now it's not 100%. So that's now, because again, in flaring your feet, you got to be careful too, right? If we flare the left toe too much, that's going to restrict his backstroke.
Yes.
Right. So the hips are going to be a little less. So again, that's where narrow and then a little bit closed, I think, is huge in getting. Because at some point you've got to get, he's talking about not enough external here too. So in that case, so we're picturing our guy that has maybe like a flying right elbow, right? Not much thoracic rotation in the backstroke. So immediately for me, I'm going to lower his arm plane, trying to get his left arm as much across the chest as he can, so help him out. And I'm going to try to get his right hip to rotate as much as possible if he can. Right. So again, if it's just thoracic, his hips still could help out. I'm going to have his right leg straighten a little bit more than normal. I mean, all this stuff to kind of get depth. And then in the forward stroke, this is kind of where I was getting. Let's assume that in the downstroke, the club head center of mass is at least neutral to the hand path at P6. Where would we want the club face to be to match up with somebody that can't rotate to the left?
More open.
Yeah,
more open, right. Yeah. So that's the thing, is like looking at that sort of something we talked to John Sinclair about, that halfway down position. Ideally, we'd want the thing turned down a little bit more, but for this, yeah, absolutely. So going back to my guy that I teach, I would never want him to have a lot of lead wrist flexion in his downstroke, because he would hook everything, or he'd hit pulls basically. Right. Because his release is going to be what? It's going to be more form rotation, maybe a little flip, right? We don't love it, but it's what you got, right? Plus, it allows him to add some speed. Now, that's the thing where you've got to really be controlling the radius. So that guy's going to have to be farther from the golf ball. Does it make sense, right? So, all these little things, you're just managing these micro moves that are going to help this guy to hit it, even though, and you may not show him a ton of video. Right? I mean, because he's not going to look like everybody else. Yeah, right. But he can play, right? He can manage some stuff. So, and with my guy, he's never going to have the most consistent club face control through impact, but he can hit it, right? And he can, so you're working on sort of balance and footwork and all that other stuff. Did I answer the question? Is that... Again, it's just kind of matchup. So it's like if they can't rotate, it's going to have definitely more hands and arms type of scenario.
I think you just run through as many options as possible to get that depth, a little bit lower at that P5, P6 location, to where they can actually hit the golf ball on the planet.
Or you could get them to step out of it. With Sean's deal, you get depth with a closed stance and then step out of it and flip it.
I mean, a little bit deeper. What about even like adding a little bit with side bend? Would that help get a little bit shallower, get that club a little bit
possibly. I mean,
it might affect low point. And that's,
exactly. It's very difficult. But you are going back to Robbie's point. It's really good. You're going to have a lot of supination, a lot of form rotation for just to get them to feel. Now again, can they do that with their trail shoulder?
Well, that's what
right?
They said limited trail arm external rotation.
But it might be more wrist angles, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. So I guess I'll chime in just for devil's advocate, right? Yeah. So if let's say that a player can't rotate, I don't know that getting depth would be my first priority even in the first place.
But we're saying he can in the backstroke. If you do that, I would say
just general spine and mobility.
Okay.
Right. So, if they've got decent spine mobility, then I want them to be deep. But if they don't have spine mobility, then I don't know if getting depth is priority number one. I might almost say, okay, well, I'm going to, like I was saying earlier, almost pull that lead foot back, flare it open a little bit.
Okay.
Because
how's that? Let me jump in there too. So how's that going to change? How are you going to change his ball position too? Then that's another key factor of this change. What are you going to do with ball position?
So the ball position is going to, effectively you're moving it back.
Correct.
Yeah.
Got to.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like if you can't externally rotate that shoulder, then effectively that low point has moved back. So you're going with that shoulder mobility, you're going to need more rotation and impact. That's why that's such a hard case. Like, if you can't rotate and that shoulder's bad, then you're going to have to do something.
Yeah, and I think you're limited to what ball flight then.
Yeah, you're gonna.
You can't hit a draw.
You're gonna
hit pull cuts.
Fades all
right.
day.
I'm with you 100%. That would be sort of my last resort. And I'm going to try to get him to move first, and if I can't, maybe it's the opposite. Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, then you got to, all right, dude, this is what we got.
Yeah.
We're going to get you hitting it solid, get the face closing, and you're going to hit pull cuts.
Right.
Yeah, I think club face is one of the first things you got to look at there. Just make sure they can close it, because they'll start picking up their distance back again, at least with just having a closed club face. And, have them hit pulls for a little bit, as opposed to,
it might be all you can do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just as long as it does, practice, pulls that don't cross the target line. Yeah.
That's a tough one. Yeah, there's a lot.
But that's one that you
that's
what we deal with every day. We come across all the time.
Got it.
Let's see. This one's from James Hong. Have you replaced Robbie and Seth yet? ? Oh wait, this is public. Just kidding.
No, that was he sent that earlier.
Michael Bolger.
They're still here.
What drills are you using with your students that are having the biggest impact on their scoring?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, gosh, where do you start? Yeah, I mean, sure. Just looking at on the lesson tee, obviously we could go straight to the golf course and we could share some of our golf course ones, but just on the lesson tee, improving ball striking, which I think is going to improve scoring. Just 3/4 straight arm drills has been money for me. I mean, and again, it might not be 3/4. I might start with half straight arm. But all we're doing is working on sequencing, working on all the pieces, but not giving it to them like in a complete unit. Right, so you're breaking it down. Depending on the player, I might even start out with waist high, just go from like 6, 7, and 8. But getting them, all we're doing is working on low point control. We got a couple of IGs. Is anybody even watching this thing? Yeah. So that would be my first thing. Just not every student, but it's almost like I call it the litmus test, as you guys have heard me talk about before on this podcast. Also, just super slow motion, deep practice pump drill, mini pump drill for the outside in guys. So but again, it requires patience and getting them to pause for a second, bring it down to 6. Mini pump, and getting them to square the face, changing that path, or even reverse engineering that, going from follow through to backstroke has been really good. Trying to think. I mean,
I've got a couple of short games.
Yeah, we can go on course too.
Sure,
I was going to share. But go ahead.
One thing that I do with a lot of students, especially if they're trying to dial in distance control with wedges and that sort of thing, we do a ladder drill where you put 2 balls at each station, maybe 2 or 3 paces back, starting as close as you would actually hit a wedge, so you wouldn't putt from off the green. So as close as you can get from a wedge, drop 2 balls and work your way back. Your first ball is your natural instinct. Your second ball is your adjustment to your first. Don't let them hit any more than that. So it's kind of a little bit of block practice, but mostly random. And then they kind of dial in their distance. And if they start to struggle at certain distance, then you throw in a block practice and have them hit 8 or 10 balls there, and then kind of moving on. You'll start to almost have them notice where they're weak and where they're more effective, and then you can actually almost kind of figure out where they need to add more block practice than random practice is a good one that I found for.
Yeah, I think I got one more, and I'm at Robbie. I know Robbie's got some good ones. And these are all, again, I haven't got the encore stuff, but I use TrackMan to really more now than any time that I have in a long time of just doing drills. And the one I got from Corey Lundberg that was on the podcast The Tour Ladder is my new one that I really, really love. And I like it because you can make it as hard as you want. But I just have them go from, 120 to 180 and give them a constraint, like how many feet, from right to left and how many yards front to back. And they've got to hit a shot in that quadrant. And you go from 120 to 180 and then basically add them up at the end. How many times does it take you to get in? It's like, I think my best junior did like 16 the other day. Like that's probably too easy, right? So you got to like make it tighter. But it really gets them focused on distance control and dispersion, and it puts a lot of pressure on them. So I think, anything you can do with that, and then obviously combines are great. So we've got a bunch of short game combines and junior combines and stuff we built on the TrackMan. So Robbie, you got some to add?
Yeah. So the 2 drives in 5 is like my favorite thing in the world. So
explain that.
For those of you who haven't heard that before, so basically what you do is you take 2 balls off the tee. So you choose a side of the fairway that is out of bounds.
This is on course, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is on course. Yeah, so you choose a side of the fairway, or even in the rough, that's out of bounds. So, like with one of my kids, we're trying to get him to never hit it left. So every time the left rough is out of bounds. So if you hit 2 balls, so if you hit the ball in the fairway, it's 0. So you add no strokes. If you hit it out of bounds, it's 2, stroke penalty. If you hit it on the other side, anywhere to the right of the fairway, it's 1. So then you pick both balls up. So the best you can do off the drive is 0, so getting both balls in the fairway. The worst you can do is adding 4 strokes. And then I give them a par 3, which depending on the skill level. So you take the balls
and move them to the fairway somewhere?
Yep. So
okay.
And it doesn't even have to be the fairway. Like a lot of times, I might throw them in a fairway bunker or in a rough.
On the same hole?
On the same hole,
okay.
Yep. So then I give them a par 3 from wherever I want them to be. So whatever shot I think is going to be suitable for their skill level. So with, if I'm taking a lady out there, I might put the ball at 50 yards away. If I'm taking one of my elite juniors, I might put it in the bunker at 170. So the goal is to make 3 off of that ball, and then I take the other ball and I put it somewhere in a short game situation where they have to get up and down. So that's 3 plus 2 would be perfect. So actually it's not perfect because you can make a birdie, but the goal would be to make 5.
So when they hit their second hit from the par 3,
they're playing that as a par 3.
So they got to play it out.
Yeah, and then they play it out from the par 2 as well, which would be the short game shot.
Okay.
So after playing out both balls, the goal would be to shoot 5 or less. So a par on the par 3 and a par on the par 2. But if you don't get the drive in play,
then let's say you got to make a birdie.
You got to make a birdie. Yeah, I got to chip it in, or you got to make birdie off the par 3. And so what I found is that certainly if I can do it like in a 3-hole stretch, then I can get a pretty good idea about what they need to work on. If they're getting penalty strokes off the drive, then almost inevitably we're going back and working on driving.
Sure.
If I get a chance to kind of look at and see how they, respond to failure off the drive, right? So if they've added 3 strokes off the drive, some of them will just pack it in and say, but then no, I want to see them try to get the best score they can. So it's almost kind of like, all right, well, what do you do? What do you do if you've already kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball? Which, how many times does that happen around? I mean, certainly, you're hoping to, go out and shoot 65, but on the first hole you make a triple.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. It's good practice, certainly for those competitive juniors, to kind of, keep pushing through, even if it's not exactly going perfect.
Right.
But on the par 3, I get a chance to kind of look at their decision making and their targeting and how they kind of problem solve from there. And then on the short game, I get a good sense of, if I throw them in the bunker or throw them on a pitch or a chip shot, I get to evaluate their short game. So not only I think is it a good tool for me evaluating their overall game without having to see them play a full round, but it's just good practice because you're getting a lot of reps on course without it being repetitive. So you're always hitting a different shot each time. So
and everyone counts.
Everyone counts, right? And it's you get the score component of it.
Yeah.
So until I find a better one, that's my golden course.
I like that. Yeah, because you can hit more shots on the same hole.
Exactly.
Without saying, okay, I'm going to take my better one, or even play worse ball and take the worst one. Every one of them counts.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
good. At the end, like you will have hit 7 or 8 shots on the same hole.
Right.
And it's one of my favorite ones. And I guess what was the question? Was it about ball striking?
No, just drills to
drills
improve.
for scoring.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you really want to frustrate your kids, have them play worst ball
ball
scramble.
scramble.
Yeah.
That's my go-to
Yeah.
when I get kids that
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I'm hitting it great." I'm like, "All right, well, let's see how good you're hitting it," because they got to make, they got to do it twice. They got to make 2 putts,
Yeah.
and that's just an easy one to just sit there and go, "Yeah, you're not as good as you."
Sure,
think you
I
were."
use that. I use it with just putting as well. If we're doing putting practices, give them 2 balls and a 15-footer, and if they can make it in 2, okay, now they got to go to 3 balls and add
Yeah.
another ball for putting and make it even more difficult, or whatever your standards might be. But yeah, I mean, worst ball is always one that's just punishing.
to go to.
Or even putting, there's the drawback as well, where you
Drawback drill,
you
yeah.
you gotta shoot a certain number or whatever, and every putt you have to draw back the length of your putting stroke to where even if you roll it up to an inch, now you've got a 36-foot or 36-inch putt, that sort of thing. Always making you hit longer putts, never have a tap in.
Cool.
Any other ones?
What's next?
All right, let's take a look here and see. Here's one from Mark Russo. What's up, fellas? How about a drill or two that will help players not retract the trail elbow in the backswing?
This one, yeah, I was gonna say that one's probably as good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just, I really just try to get them to feel like their right arm's straight a lot. I mean, I spent a lot of time on that. But yeah, this one.
Smart ball's good.
Yeah, smart ball's off. But we're still, I mean, you can still kind of bend them in, but it's like this one is really good. But I think typically when this right elbow goes this way, then it wants to bend in. Trying to think. This is usually my go-to. Trying to think of any other ones that. I mean, you got to, ultimately you've got to figure out what's causing that. Typically, it's under-rotated torso. If the torso isn't rotating, then, or they're trying to tuck the right elbow, then it could be a model issue where they're trying to tuck the right elbow because that's what they think they need to do. See that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So just getting them to understand that, whether it's the right arm on top of the left or I'm literally just always getting them to push their right arm, push their hands away from their trail shoulder at the top of the backswing as much as I can get them to do it. Width is a big deal. I mean, width is your friend, especially for players that tend to have a tough time controlling the path. If you got somebody that just like the bigger guys we talked about, I mean, if you can get them some sort of width, and the trail arm is the deal. Like most people are trying to straighten their lead arm, which I think is a big mistake. Trying to think, I'm kind of going blank on that one. But yeah, I'm just really trying to get them to push it away. Smart ball, like you said, is really good. Anything in between the arms or something, maybe a TheraBand.
Yeah,
like
that's actually exactly where I was going.
Put a TheraBand on their belt loop, and so they got some resistance. So basically, give them a reason, like it's wanting to pull them in, and then they're going to go opposite. I mean, that's pretty good as well.
The other one that I was going to say is a lot of times I see when the arm and the torso aren't arriving at the top of the backswing at a pretty similar time. Like you'll get the chest completely rotating, but then you'll get a lot of runoff. So just a little thing you could do, and this is if they're already rotating quite a bit. Like if they've already got a decent pivot, like if they're not pivoting and their right arm's getting behind, then you probably should get them to pivot. But if they're already pivoting well and that right arm is kind of running away, then a good one you can do is just say like one Mississippi or say some sort of phrase and try to get all of the segments to stop after you've gone ahead and said
the timing issue.
Yeah,
sure.
So you might need to find that maybe you feel almost like a little earlier with the club. So a lot of times if the chest goes too soon and then the club's lagging behind, a lot of times it'll run off. So
or if the chest is late. The opposite too, like if that's what they say when it starts to pull in early. Typically, I spend more time trying to probably get the chest to go earlier, and then trying to feel like they really stay wide.
Right.
That way they don't have to have run off.
The only way it wouldn't work in your scenario is if they already have a really good chest rotation. So if they take it back with chest before hands, and then stop the chest, the hands will run.
And then they're hypermobile, which the arms keep running off.
about.
Yeah, for sure. You got a lot of shoulder flexibility that tends to get them there. But I think most of the time I see that it's either lack of rotation or it's a poor model.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're literally trying to do that.
Yeah.
They're trying to tuck their right elbow early. And
like Jason said, I'm much more concerned about the flex in the elbow as opposed to the shoulder rotation. I'm kind of with, I've talked with John a little bit about this, but I think people get a little crazy with the trail shoulder external rotation.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't as long as you have enough rotation impact. Now, I'll say this, like for players who can't rotate, if they've got good shoulder mobility, then yes, I'll try to get them to delay that external as long as possible. But if they're already able to get open at impact, then as long as they can pronate the lead forearm a little bit, flex the lead wrist, then they're going to get shallow enough.
Yeah, I've definitely changed my tune on that too. Where guys that look stuck, where I thought they can make it work. Yeah. As long as they're pivot.
As long as they can
rotate the chest open, they can get it to work, like a la Jim Furyk.
Yeah. So that's kind of the matchup that I was talking about earlier with our kind of limited thorax guy.
Yeah.
Right? So like if we're going strike first, right? So then I would want them to kind of match that shoulder rotation with the amount of open rotation impact.
You just got to make them aware that they're going to swing across at 12 degrees.
But then you shallow it out with more of the forearm rotation.
You try. Sure.
But if they can't get open, then that's where you kind of pull that lead foot back and do all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's a lot of solutions to the problems, which is why we have coaches. All right.
Here's one from Jordan Young.
Like my phone's dead, looks like. Or gone. That's fine.
Facebook.
Right.
Yeah, Facebook's still on.
From Jordan Young, how about a drill for players that crash into their lead side too soon with too much pressure too soon in the downswing, resulting in a throw or cast? Love to hear your go-to for this one.
I would say, trying to think, mini step drill would work. I'm trying to think what he's saying is he's saying too much slide. Like basically early pressure shift to the left.
Can you reread the question?
So it says,
do that again.
How about a drill for players that crash into their lead side too soon, right? Too much pressure too soon in the downswing, resulting in a throw or cast.
I'm thinking he's talking about thorax slide. Torso getting
and then
closer to the target.
And then
upper body.
Upper body, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense because that doesn't.
So it might not be pressure, but more like mass.
Yeah, I was going to say center of mass more forward.
Yeah, upper center more forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's upper center more, if we're talking this going more forward.
That's what I think he's talking about.
I like having them set up with their left foot behind their right, like this. And it's a tough one for them to do. But if they do that, they're going to fall over. Mm-hmm. So I'll literally have left foot behind the right, have them hit some shots, which forces their center of mass to sort of stay behind the center of pressure. That would be my first one. Just simple, I'm a hands-on teacher, so I'm going to have, instead of, most people would say, they're going to hold their head. This way, I will actually put my finger on the other side and make them push against my finger in transition. Right. So when they're coming down, they're literally feeling like their head's moving back a little bit, which is not, obviously, it's just not going to move forward.
Right. Or even throwing like a barrier here that they can't touch.
Either one.
But
I used to always go, just keep your head still, and but they're not having to do anything. So I want to make sure that they're having to do the work.
You're right.
So putting it on the back side of their temple, and just having them push back. Simple little cues where I've got a guy that I'm just thinking about that I was working with the other day, and I've just literally sometimes it's an intention issue of I've seen that happen when the ball position's too forward. Right, so they're trying to get to the golf ball that way. Guy had the ball too far forward, so I moved the ball back a little bit, and I told him I literally want you to hit the ball with your nose behind the ball. Just a simple cue like that. Any drills that come to mind? Yeah, I'll probably think of one here.
That could go down the rabbit hole here, but
I know.
The way he described that question is almost cause and effect. So this happens sooner in the golf swing, which then causes something to happen later. Well, who's to say that the fact that maybe he doesn't know how to close the club face with his release and he doesn't know how to direct the timing and direction of his arms extending didn't then lead him in the direction of sliding forward. So with me, a lot of times what I'll do, and I'll oftentimes kind of do this in pairs, where I'll take a alignment stick, and let's say that my phone is a golf ball, and I'll put the alignment stick. This might be bad for audio, but I'll put the alignment stick somewhere over the golf ball, so then in their field of vision, the alignment stick and the ball are somewhere in a line. And then what I'll do is I'll take their lead hand off the club, and I'll say, okay, I want you to just brush the ground in front of the stick with just your right arm while keeping the ball and the stick in a line. So then what they're actually having to do is they're having to then pivot more.
Yeah, and the visual of lining it up is keeping their upper body back.
So the cue there is to make sure that when they're swinging, they don't see the stick go to the right of the golf ball.
Yeah, that's
right?
good.
So they're keeping that in a line, but then I'm also getting them to feel some different things happening with their pivot as well as their right arm. Sure. And so cause and effect is something that is easily bought and easily sold in the golf instruction world, but it just doesn't hold much weight. I think you just need to fix things in pairs more often than not. Just you can't assume that fixing one thing is going to magically cause the other thing to fall in line.
Yeah, I think you got to dig it. I mean, you got to figure out why that's on my point. Like, you got to figure out why is he lunging at it.
Sure.
He's got to be doing that for a reason. Like you said, it could be an open club face, could be a ball position too far forward. It could be a variety of things. It could be just he can't right side bend.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be just something simple like that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think a drill that you could even add there is put the ball on his back foot and tell him to hit it over something.
that would be extreme. Yeah. That would do it. But yeah, I think just adding constraints, giving them feels. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking it's always somebody pops to mind when
the uphill lie where the left foot or the lead foot's above the right wouldn't also be a bad one for that one as well.
Yeah, hit it up uphill lie, and it's gonna have a tougher time lunging at it. Good question though.
Yeah, let's see if anybody else commented on here. It looks like all of the Facebook comments. Did you have a text from Preston?
Yeah, he never did send me the questions.
Come on, Preston.
I thought he texted you.
He did text me. He said he was going to have some questions.
Here. He could have texted. But I'll get on Instagram here real quick. So just check. That's right. We're not live anymore because it clicked off.
Yeah, it clicked off.
Any comments on that? Nothing on the Instagram?
Let's see. Save it. So I guess I'll just share this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I go to my story or what? Yeah, Preston, he said he was going to email me or text me. He never did text.
Just text right there, bro.
Yeah, but it wasn't a question. Okay. So, Preston, come on. You win Teacher of the Year, and then now you let me down.
I think she's hot stuff. Can't even respond to a text.
All right. Any other topics you want to talk about?
I think I got one more little touch up and
throw it out.
What are some advice that you could give even to your junior golfers, your good players, some that are either going through a slump or get frustrated often? Not necessarily dealing with parents so much, but even just how to adjust attitude on the golf course for juniors. Is there anything that you talk to them about, or do you go out on the course and see them a little bit?
Are we talking about just like outbursts on the course, or are we just talking about they're going through a slump and they're telling you they're frustrated?
Yeah, I would say more of a slump, like a slump, kind of going through, getting frustrated, like kind of plateauing even just a little bit.
That's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go on that one, but I mean, I just try to explain to them it's a process. I mean, it would be great if our golf game was always going uphill, but there's always going to be peaks and valleys, and I think it's tough because especially how old is the kid? You talking about 11-year-old, 10-year-olds?
Exactly,
yeah. I mean, when you're 10 years old, every day is exciting. Every day is you're not thinking about next year. You're not thinking about when you're going to grow 6 inches in the next year and start to hit the ball farther. You know what I mean? Like all you're doing is living and dying on that last round. So it's just there's no right answer there, but it's more about just explaining to them that, hey, you're going to have some ups and downs. Keep encouraging them, tell them. And that's why the first question I ask when my kids come back from a tournament is, what did you do well? And even especially when they play bad, at least get some focus on, wow, I hit I hit the driver better, or I putted okay, and then start to build on that, right? So just break their game down into different pieces. And, a lot of times I'll have them put a grade on it, and say, all right, so that way say, yeah, we're going to get this better. But, man, you really have come a long way since last year. And maybe even talk to them about, where they used to be, right? Especially if it's a kid that, nobody was ever great right when they started. But, that's a tough question. I mean, you got to be a bit of a sports psychologist there and just try to get them to understand that, man, you got a lot of golf ahead of you, and it's going to get better. The uphill climb's coming.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's just, that's a tough answer, but every kid's different. But if it's a behavioral issue on the course, I'll try to get. I try to manage it on the range. Like, I hate seeing kids reacting to bad shots on the range. It just drives me nuts. Mm-hmm. So I'll address it then, and then if they don't stop, I'll video them and show it to them, and usually that does it. Like, on the course, I'll video them, and say, man, good players don't act like this.
Sure.
And I'm all about, I don't want them to not get frustrated. I think they just got to control it and then be able to channel it and go forward. But, I don't put up with that.
You'd see that with adults, too.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. I've got some of my best adult students. I'll talk to them about their reactions and their outbursts. They're not exempt. Sometimes they're worse. It's good. Any other questions before we wrap up?
I think we're good. That was awesome.
Yep.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always, hopefully we helped a few people out there. Appreciate everybody supporting the podcast. This was a bit of an experiment with doing Facebook Live and Instagram. Let me know how you like it. We could do more of this. If I had a crew, if I had a camera crew and a staff, I could film all my interviews. But I think this is a lot of fun, and it's always great to include you guys because you bring so much value to the audience as well. And I appreciate everything.
We're happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Goodbye. Thanks so much for tuning in to our training session. Hopefully this was helpful to you teachers out there, and let me know what you think about it. Once again, you can reach myself at Golf Guru TV on Twitter and Instagram, and you can reach Seth at Seth Merz Golf and Robbie Fails at Rob Fails Golf on Instagram and the Twitter. So reach out to those guys. They were fantastic. Gave some really, really good drills and some insight into their ever-growing knowledge. So I so appreciate my staff, and these are really, really fun to do. Thanks so much for downloading the podcast. Thank you for sharing. The downloads are over exceeded my expectations, as I had no clue when I started this thing, but I really, really appreciate all the support. Let me know how I can do better. Thanks for everybody that's reached out thus far via text or email. I just can't tell you how grateful I am that somebody's actually listening to this. So as I always leave you with the infamous words of Mr. Rohn: study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks again for listening.